Good evening. I'm Selwyn Collins, your host of CWS Conversations with Selwyn. Thank you for joining us. And for those of you who are joining us for the first time, a very special thank you. I am especially glad to have you, the first time viewers, because one of the things that the messages I try to bring out here on CWS every week is the importance of believing in yourself, believing in your idea, and pursuing it. Tonight, but before I get into this, I want to tell you a little bit about CWS. CWS is really about having conversations with people about their journey and how are they using their gifts and talents to help others. How are you making a positive contribution to humanity? I believe that every one of us has a story, and it's in our stories that we find the hidden treasures. I believe that it is so very important when we have accomplished or we have attained some level of success to not get so caught up in our successes that we don't want to share or we don't no longer want to give of ourselves. I always believe that our success does not belong to us. It belongs to humanity. It belongs to everyone. Imagine yourself as a beacon of light, shining with the radiance of success. But that beacon, that light, illuminates the paths of others, reminding others that they too can shine, illuminating them so that they can find their own switches. I believe that when we come together and give unconditionally, give beyond ourselves, then humanity could be better for it. I invite people here every week, not only to talk about their successes, but hopefully sometimes we can hear about their challenges and how they might have overcome some of their challenges. To me, a challenge and how you overcome your challenge is a best measurement of who you are as a person. But more importantly, imagine a young person somewhere in the world listening to you talk about yourself, talk about overcoming challenges and recognizing similar challenges, similar limitations, and being able to step beyond themselves and pursue their dreams, implement their ideas, and become successful. The beauty I love, the power I love in this paradox of life is that when we give unconditionally and we give beyond ourselves, there's no way of knowing the extent of our gifts. And that to me is the essence of humanity. To give without expectations and to give without knowing the effect or the long-term effect of your gifts. Tonight, we have a gem of our soil, Beverley Drake. I want to take a break and then introduce her, but I'll do something different. I will read her bio because when I think about Beverley Christiani-Drake, I think of the word unreasonable, not in the sense of being vile and being lewd and being disagreeable, but and one of my good friends, Kay, puts it best. To be unreasonable is to take chances, is to do things that most will not do, to go beyond yourself, beyond your limitation. And tonight we are going to have a conversation with a woman, a gem of our soil, as I said before, who had to have been unreasonable. She had to be unreasonable because she's a pioneer in so many things. She's the first in so many things, which I will bring out tonight, hopefully in our conversation. But I celebrate this woman here tonight because I am so proud of her. And because I know that she was unreasonable. We will hear about her. But let me read her bio a little bit. Beverley Drake's professional career in aviation spans 37 years, dedicating over 22 of those years to the National Transportation Safety Board, known as NTSB. This distinguished career began in her native country, Guyana, after she left Guyana in 1976 and successfully completed her commercial pilot's license and instrument rating at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University before she returned to join the Guyana Defense Force. During her tenure, she skillfully flew a Briton-Norman Islander in the dense jungles of Guyana and was the first woman to fly the Twin Otter and Hawker Siddeley 748 at Guyana Airways on both local and international routes to Trinidad Barbados, and Dominica. Miss Drake immigrated to the US and was employed at Goldman Sachs before joining the NTSB. At the NTSB, she has investigated over 300 small and large scale accidents. She served as the witness group chairman for US Air Flight 427 and the reconstruction of TWA 800, a 747 that exploded shortly after takeoff in New York, 1996. Ms. Drake was honored by the government of Guyana on World Post Day, October 9, 2013, with the unveiling of a local $20 and $80 international stamp being her image. The stamp tells a story of a nation's history, culture, and other important facts of the country of origin. She has received several awards, including a Pioneer Award for her pioneering skills in aircraft safety by the Organization of Black Aerospace Professionals. She was one of several recipients of the Golden Arrowhead Award of Distinction from her birth country, Guyana, celebrating 47 years of independence. She also received a proclamation citation from the City of New York held in the rotunda of the Brooklyn Borough President's Office. She has a Bachelor's of Science in Professional Aeronautics and a Master's degree in Aeronautical Science with dual specializations in Management and Operations from Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. I'll take a break, and when we return, let the show begin. We are back, and those of you joining us for the first time, I'm Selwyn Collins, your host of CWS Conversations with Selwyn. The distinguished lady next to me is Beverley Christiani-Drake. Beverley, good evening.
Good evening, Selwyn. Thanks for having me on the program.
You're quite welcome, Beverley. Let me start by saying I'm very proud of you, and I'm confident many share my sentiments. It is an honor to be given this opportunity to converse with you about your journey, but more importantly, to thank you for all you have done to make us proud as Guyanese. Beverley, what did you enjoy doing as a child?
I'm sorry, what was your question, Selwyn?
What did you enjoy doing as a child?
Interestingly enough, I did never enjoy playing with dolls or toys, like a regular girl would play. They used to call me a tomboy as I grew up as a child. And I remember my dad taking me to the airport, and having little toy airplanes. He had a subscription for a magazine. And so he collected airplanes. And I had this fascination since as a kid of just liking being around airplanes.
Wow. Can you describe what it was like for you as a young woman, leaving home and familiar surroundings to study at Embry-Riddle, the prestigious aeronautical university?
It's interesting that you say it was bittersweet for me. I was all excited. I attended St. Rose's High School, and after I left St. Rose's High School, I pursued, I was always science oriented, and so I pursued at the University of Guyana. I was pursuing being a chemistry and biology major. And while at the university, I saw an advert for, they were looking for pilots. And of course, I pursued, I interviewed, and I was successful. And just before I left, my mom was ill. But I never thought or knew that she would die, because we always think that our parents are going to live forever. Anyway, I left and I arrived at Embry-Riddle, and I was all excited. It's this 19-year-old girl showing up at a place where basically I don't know anyone there, but it was nice. The weather was great. And so I was all excited. I started my flying, and as I got, my first instructor, his name was Thomas Troy. He was a great guy. And I really enjoyed my initial few days, but disaster struck. And 10 days after I got there, my mom passed away, and that was devastating.
Wow. I'm my well. I know my condolences. It's very difficult to know what to say in these times, but I can only imagine what that must have been like for you being away and hearing this news. What was it like being with your mother? What was that relationship like for you before you left? Are you the only girl?
No, actually, there are two of us. I have one sister. She's older. But my sister is the more ladylike type, while I was the tomboy of the family. I would, be playing three hole gam or playing cricket with the guys. And of course, my dad always wanted to be a pilot. Back in the 40s, his dream was to be a pilot. But of
Hmm.
course, being a black man in South America was not possible. And so I think he kind of figured out, oh, I'm going to encourage this one. She seemed to be a tomboy. She may pursue my dream, and I sure lived my dad's dream. My mom, on the other hand, was a stay-at-home mom, and she was my best friend. And I would come home at the end of the day, and we would talk about things in general. We talked about our boyfriends and stuff, and she was a real cool mom. And I'm the same with my kids. I'm a cool mom with my boys.
Talking about your dad having had this dream of becoming a pilot, and he may have pushed you. Is it fair to ask how did your mom react when you told her that you were going to be a pilot?
Actually, like I said, I started was at the University of Guyana pursuing a chemistry and biology major, and it was at a university that while I was there, the advert came out, and when I told her, I said, "Mom, I want to pursue a career in aviation," and she said, "Are you sure?" And of course, there's my dad behind said, "Of course, the girl wants to fly. Look how she shows an interest in these model airplanes." And he kind of convinced my mother that I was going to be a pilot.
Um, what does it mean to be the first woman military slash commercial pilot to fly for the airline of your country?
Actually, when I returned from Embry-Riddle, it was Cheryl Moore and I. She was Pickering. We returned after pursuing. It was over a little over a year, a very intense course that we. It was 12 of us who were selected, and Cheryl and I completed our training in first, and we returned in 1977, and it was the excitement. I mean, we were returning to fly the British Northern Highlander in the army, and it was fun. I mean, my dad, I remember my first takeoff, him standing at the sidelines of the runway, and as I was, taxiing and rolling down, I saw him off to the side, and as I took off for my very first flight, he was the happiest man. But then at that time, uh, Burnham decided that he wanted to integrate a few of us with some of the guys at Guyana Airways. And so I was selected as the first female to join the guys at Guyana Airways. And initially there was some pushback, but I guess after, I flew with Captain Chana Sue. To this day, a matter of fact, I spoke to him a couple weeks ago while I was in Guyana, and Captain Fields and Lloyd Marshall. Those guys were fantastic. I mean, they took me under their wing, and really, I would say that's where some of my mentoring in aviation really started.
What did you enjoy most about flying for the military?
I guess you know when we fly in the regional in the jungle, and so most of our flying was supplies. Taking soldiers back and forth. Of course, it was not in the combat mode, as some people would think we had fighter jets, but it was um, it was most reconnaissance, taking supplies in, and I recall flying into one of the locations called Ikaraku. Um, there were, of course, the guys who were doing the pork knocking and mining gold, and they were always used to seeing men. And here it is, this lady shows up, and the guys were like, "Oh my gosh, what's going on here?" Because back then you can just imagine the macho type, man, and seeing women at flying, and of course they were happy that I was bringing in their supplies, but they were kind of like, does she really know what she's doing?
Um, why did you want to become a pilot though?
Actually, I was always fascinated, as a like I said, I was a science major,
Hmm.
and in physics, one of the things you learn, is about forces. You learn about lift, and you learn about weight and drag and all of that. And to this day, I know there are a lot of people who are fascinated by, how does an airplane that weighs so much is able to stay airborne? And I learned that from an early age. With there was a guy, of course, Bernoulli's theory, that talks about air being accelerated over the wing, creates a lower pressure on the bottom that kind of lifts the airplane. And of course, there's thrust from the engine and there's drag, because there's another guy, Newton laws. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So with learning all of that, I think I was able to connect the dots.
Hmm.
And so it was very easy for me, um, being, like I said, with the physics. And of course, I hated history and geography. I just wanted to do my calculus and math and physics, and I was a happy camper.
You told us about being a pilot and when you came back in '77. Can you remember when is the first time you flew as a passenger in a plane?
Actually, in the military, we flew mainly soldiers and I guess and supplies. Um, I'm transitioned. I was seconded to Guyana Airways very early, and so I flew the Twin Otter and the Hawker City 748, and I enjoyed flying it, especially the Hawker City 748 that we used for to fly to Trinidad, to Barbados, and I remember taking off, heading to Barbados, and getting in the cockpit and sitting there with the captain, of course, before the passengers got on board. And then they loaded the passengers, and the captain said to me, he said, Beverly, just go at the back and check and make sure everything's okay. And as I got out of the cockpit and I walked to the back, I'm like, I can see the jaws dropping from quite a few people. And I just chuckled to myself, because I said, oh my gosh, they're kind of scared. But it turned out I, of course, flew that leg to Barbados, and the landing was pristine. It was good.
What was that your first destination as a commercial pilot?
No, no, because flying in the army, I flew many times to a lot of the remote areas. I flew, for instance, Port Kaituma. I flew many of Jim Jones's officials around, but I mainly flew them around in the Twin Otter because they use the Twin Otter a lot.
Hmm.
That was quite interesting, flying those people, and them telling me about the People's Temple and all of that, and they kept saying, maybe you should visit us, and I kept saying, okay, one of these days.
Maybe thank God you never did, right?
I'm glad I didn't exactly.
Um, did anyone, and I'm asking this question because you mentioned your experience walking to the back of the plane and observing how people's jaws dropped. Did anyone ever make you feel like you were stepping out of bounds when you became a pilot?
No, actually, I must say, one of the things that I established at a very early age was mentors. And my dad initially was my mentor. And because I had that male um, person to guide me, to advise me, because I'm operating in a male dominated environment, I, I felt comfortable that I had a male mentor. And so working, I think, with a male mentor in a male dominated field made me feel comfortable. It did not, never felt like I was over my head or I was stepping out of bounds. I felt that I could do whatever I want to do as long as I put my mind to it. And it was my love and my passion. And I decided I'm going to be successful. And that's exactly what, that's my kind of my mantra. I feel that if you have a passion for anything, go after it.
So on that note, what would you tell a young girl who wants to become a pilot on how to prepare herself?
I would say to anyone who would want to follow, their challenges that you will face, but you don't let those challenges prevent you from pursuing your goal. And the reason why I say there are some challenges is because I usually I participate in a lot of career days. I go to the middle schools and I go to the high schools. And now I'm even going to the elementary schools because I find that we have to touch the kids at the earlier age. And I tell them, I said, you may have someone tell you, I don't think you're cut out to do so and so, or they might be struggling with math, and they said, I don't want to do math or I don't want to do sciences because I just don't have it. I know that there's some counselors that sometimes steer kids in direction because they feel that they're not going to be successful. But I tell those kids, find someone who has the same interest like yourself. And that's what I did. My dad, of course, was my first. And then at my office, Dennis Jones, he was my supervisor, and he really helped me. And I think that if you find someone who has your interests, ask them to help you in areas that you may have some difficulty with, and just get some extra, maybe extra lessons or so, and you'll be surprised how well you can do.
So why aren't more women airline? Why aren't there more women airline pilots in your view?
Well, for one, it's an expensive career. Um, you just don't become a pilot with just a couple few dollars. It's a process that you have to go through. You have to first get take your instruction, and then you get your private pilot's license, and then even when you get your private pilot's license, there's single engineer planes that you fly, and then you have to fly complex airplanes like with retractable gear, and so for instance, Embry-Riddle, of course, is the Harvard of aviation. I mean, one of the top universities for in aviation. It's an expensive school, and when you're talking about not just flying, you also have to study and do you know courses, pilot navigation, aerodynamics. All those things are very expensive, and you have to pursue and you have to keep at it. And so funding is another thing that you'll have to look into. So I think part of it could be one, we are not encouraging the girls, and I think it even goes back to we're looking and finding that it even seems to be in the cradle, and or growing up as a small child, you find that the toys that the girls play with are more feminine and dolls, as opposed to the toys that the boys play with are the trucks, and they would take something apart. But you know what? We gotta get those girls to have the same toys like the boys and have them take apart the cars and stuff. And so that will, I think, will pique their interest.
You know, I feel compelled to revisit your timeline. You returned to Guyana in 1977, and you said after a while, in flying for the military, the then president Forbes Barnum said he wanted to integrate women with the men in the commercial airline of Guyana. I want to ask you this, and I hope it's a fair question to you. You just mentioned how expensive it was, or it is, to attend flight school, but especially one like Embry-Riddle. Would you say that it was a vision or a good vision or forward thinking of the then president of Guyana to select women to go on this trip or to go and study avionics or aeronautics back in those days? How would you
Actually,
describe that?
actually, it goes back even further. This and it's interesting because I learned a lot of about how the group that was selected to go to Embry-Riddle, um, it was actually the brainchild of then Minister Shirley Field Ridley, who had a vision. The year, I think it was 1975, around them, 74, 75, and it was the year of the woman. And she had a discussion, and it was I was happy to hear retired Colonel Larry London talk about it, because he spoke at the stamp launch, and he remembered having a conversation with Minister Field Ridley, and she said to him, "Why aren't there more women in aviation?" And of course, fast forward, I think out of that conversation came the advert that I was then selected. So it started before even I got to Guyana Airways.
I'm glad you mentioned that because it is very important for us to acknowledge our women, not only to send a message that women are very important to a nation, but to also to young girls to have something to look up to. And this is why I mentioned in my opening remarks how very proud I am of you and for what you have done to our country, for our country. Um, and so I want to ask this question. Um, what one person do you feel best exemplifies the changing role of women in aviation today?
Um, I for when I look at some of the ladies who are in I look at there was Bessie Coleman, who was an African American woman back in the 1920s, who couldn't get her license in the United States, and she went to France, and she got her license. And when I read of some of her story, I feel that those ladies back then, like Bessie Coleman, they paved the way for many of us. And so I really, and that's one of the reasons why I really think it's important that we talk to our young women, just let them know of the careers that are available, and so that they could pursue, a career in science, technology, engineering, and math.
Bev, that's a good note to take a break. Let's take a quick break.
Na 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 na. Oh yeah. Oh, Jah, you're my strength. You're my strength. Oh yeah. If Jah's my strength and salvation, then whom shall I fear?
I want to go to the chat room and read a few comments. Karen G said, Selwyn, you made me smile with that opening on being unreasonable. Oh, you're welcome, Karen. And Carol said, we are proud of you. Sheldon Britton said, it is indeed a pleasure listening to the distinguished first female Guyanese commercial pilot, says Beverley Christiani-Drake. Question, how about some thoughts on aircraft maintenance in Guyana?
Actually, next time I'm going to arrange for you to interview one of my friends. He's Roberts. He worked at Guyana Airways as an engineer, and he now flies all over the world. And but I remember not having much interaction with with the aircraft engineers and mechanics. I guess the only time that you would probably have an interaction is if you have a problem with the airplane. And so once the airplane is airworthy, there's no need to talk to them. But I know quite a lot of them, and I'm still in touch with quite a few of them. And those guys are great. They did a tremendous job maintaining those airplanes.
Of all the awards you received for excellence, which one are you most proud?
Um, I guess I I determine I'm a very um of all I would say I would determine I once I put my mind once I set goals and I like to set goals and work toward those goals. And of course you set goals and you try to work toward those goals, but in between you may have some challenges. But those challenges, I think, the challenges that I encountered made me who I am. I would, successful and determined, and I have so many things that I would like to do in the near future, which of course includes teaching. That's one of the things I think I would like to do is to teach.
Um, I want to go back to s- something you said earlier about mathematics and teaching young girls math or encouraging them when they may feel um, discouraged because they're not good in a particular area. What what type of challenges did you have when you first went to the university? I know you were good in the sciences, but can you tell us one particular challenge or two you might have had that you overcame?
I could tell you one of the challenges that I had that I think if I had put more into it, but growing up as a child, I never gravitated toward the arts, which, like literature and history and, well, I did English, but geography. I didn't like writing. And to me, it's important because now that I'm, part as an investigator where I have to write complex reports, the writing that I should have focused on many years ago, even though there's plain English now and there's all plain languages, all kinds of, the American, of course, English is different, a little different spelling wise. I think I would encourage girls, or I would encourage not only girls, I would encourage anyone to have a diverse background. Have diversity is key. Make sure English writing, because communication, employers today, there are a few things that employers focus on tremendously, and some of them are they want to make sure that you could communicate both verbally and in writing. And the other one that is key is creativity. You must be creative. And I think a lot of the big Fortune 500 companies, they're looking for creative people. So have that creative background is very important too.
You know what I admire a lot in you, Beverly, is in any conversation, you're always so very present. And when you speak about your career, about what you do, there is this level of enthusiasm and passion, and which I admire tremendously. And when you mentioned to me your endeavor to push or encourage rather young women to pursue STEM, you know, I felt it, and when I felt it, I realized that, and you said it very nonchalantly to me. Um, when I felt it, I realized that Beverly will be such a great ambassador for this very important principle, STEM, or aspect of education, I should say. But I want to talk a little bit about that ceremony, that commemorative stamp. I want to go there. Um, your accomplishments, Bev, are very remarkable, and your country recognized and bestowed upon you a commemorative stamp, which I'm glad is while you're still alive, and congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations. Now, this stamp tells a story. What do you believe is the story it tells about you and your country of birth, Guyana?
I think when it's like the postmaster said. He said the stamp is not only local, it's also international, and it's gonna enter the homes both locally and all over the world. And when that stamp shows up on a letter and it comes into a household, and there's a young girl or a young male looking at the envelope and seeing a face there on that stamp, and it comes from Guyana. Guyana, it where is Guyana? It has a history. South America, of course, it has so much to teach young people that they can aspire to greatness, even though for me, growing up, I never knew that I would be on a stamp. I mean, I looked at Queen Elizabeth on a stamp, and I remember just February of this year standing next to the Ella Fitzgerald stamp at my office when we had Black History Month, and little did I know 7 months later that I would be on a stamp. And I'm alive too, because when I told some of my friends, American friends, that be on a stamp. They were like, stamp? You gotta be dead at least 10 years in the United States to be on a stamp. And then I said, no, I don't think so, because I remember Muhammad Ali being on a stamp and he's still alive. So it's just like when my friend said to me, how does it feel? And I'm like, it hasn't really sunk in as yet.
You know,
Maybe one of the letters when I was in Guyana, I mailed a letter to myself. So maybe when the letter arrives, which should arrive shortly, that is when it's gonna hit home.
can, can, um, can you walk us through the experience of the ceremony and what it was like standing there next to your friend Cheryl Moore, another woman pioneer in the aviation industry? What was that like?
It was that night. The prime minister honored a few pioneers. He honored Willett Lord. She was the first female jet pilot. They honored Debbie Gavaya. She was the first captain on a reciprocating airplane engine. There was Paula McAdams. She was the first air traffic controller. Then there was Farrell Ali, and there was
Bob.
my dear friend Barbara Adams, who was the first helicopter pilot. She couldn't be there, so we all were sitting at the head table. It was a table, and we sat there, and we had speakers. Colonel London spoke on behalf of Cheryl and myself and Barbara Adams, because we were military pilots. And so after he, made a speech, and then other people spoke on behalf of the other ladies, they had a video going, showing some of our past, with us sitting in airplanes and things. And little did I know, behind the white curtain, they had enlarged our stamps and made these huge posters. On the left was my stamp, my $20 stamp. In the middle was the $80 stamp, which is used to international. And then on the right was Cheryl Moore's $20 stamp. And below that was, of course, the first cover. And as they made speeches and everything, I noticed the prime minister walked up to to the front, and then he pulled this white curtain back. And oh my gosh, when I saw those, it was just overwhelming. It was a feeling that it's hard to describe. The emotions, their flashbacks. I thought of my parents wishing they were there, but fortunately my mother's sister, my Aunt Phyllis, traveled with me to Guyana, and she was there with her family, my uncle and my cousin, and so they were there. But it was just beautiful. And when he pulled the curtain back, he just stood there with a smile on his face, and it's like kind of like a smile of approval. And then we were summoned, Cheryl and I, we had to go to the front, and the Postmaster General presented me with a set of my stamps in a frame and the first cover, and he did the same for Cheryl. And then we had Brenda. Brenda was the brains behind this project. I mean, Brenda saw them unveil Rosa Parks's figure at the rotunda, and she had this flashback, and she was thinking about it. And then one day, it was Women's History Month, and I was standing next to Ella Fitzgerald's stamp, and she made a joke. She said, Beverly, you should be on a stamp. And I said, you gotta be kidding me.
Is this our friend Brenda Richards?
That's right, Brenda. Oh my gosh, I must give kudos to Brenda. And Brenda said, Beverly, let me see what I can. I'll get back to you. And we were kidding around on Facebook, when people were saying comments and stuff, and I said, "There's no way." And fast forward, here it is, 7 months later, and I have a commemorative stamp.
Well,
And after the unveiling and the speeches, my aunt surprisingly came up to present me with a bouquet of flowers on behalf of my mom and dad who couldn't be there, but who I knew was there in spirit. And it was very touching.
if your mom were alive, what 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 do you think she would be telling you at this moment?
Oh, my mom would have been saying, "Baby, I'm so proud of you." Growing up, I was always a dedicated to my parents. I always wanted to make my parents proud of me, and so when I, got a scholarship to go to St. Rose's we had a choice, and they selected St. Rose's, and I went to St. Rose's. I It was my determination that I was going to excel and make my parents proud of me. And the same thing, of course, I want to set that example for my children as well. And so I made them proud, my parents, and so my sons, I mean, they are just proud of their mom, and so it's nice to, and of course, it's even nicer to live your father's dream.
Congratulations. Can you remember what you said to each other? You and Cheryl, yeah, Cheryl Moore. Can you remember what you said to each other about being so honored?
You know, during the day, we were talking to each other because we were working out the logistics, because there were some plaques that we presented to Mr. Leslie Dundas, the Postmaster General, I mean, for his dedication, and Margot Boyce for her continued work and dedication, for Brenda for her vision and leadership. Cheryl and I, we were just grateful to all these people that came together to do this for us, to honor us, on a stamp, and not just one stamp. We have individual $20 stamps, which will be used to mail letters within the country, and an $80 stamp that's going to be used to mail letters in the United States. And of course, you add another $20. I think it's $100 for the UK. But Cheryl and I, we were always, I mean, even at flight school, I could tell you, when we were learning to fly on weekends, Cheryl and I would plan it that we would both go on the same route. We would go to the flight line, we would log out our airplanes, and we would both take off one behind the other. And, of course, we would fly when the weather was good. And she'd be flying. I would look over to my wingtip, and there's Cheryl over there flying in her airplane, and I'm flying in my airplane, and we're busy talking on the radio. And then she'll say, "Well, Beverly, you go in and land first," and then she'll land behind me, and then we'll have our breakfast or lunch, and then we'll take off. And we did things together.
I
We
like
really worked together.
I like that, and I like the camaraderie between you and Cheryl as women. And I want to mention this. There were six other women honored. Farrell Ali, Barbara Adams, which you mentioned, Williette Gardner, and Sandra Passad. Um, Apart from breaking the gender barriers, what do you believe this means for women of Guyana, and what message it sends to young girls growing up in Guyana and its diaspora?
I think it's great that Cheryl and I, we did two interviews. We did on the NCN television, and I was hoping that when it was aired, that the young women they would see that here are two regular girls growing up not privileged, um, went to a regular school. I went to St. Rose's, Cheryl went to St. Joseph's, that with dedication and of course it does help to have sponsors because we all got a Guyana scholarship that paid for our flight training. And if they can get some form of maybe internship or sponsorship that can help some of the young ladies to follow their passion, it would be a great thing. And that's one of the things a group of us are working on right now. We're working, trying to work on a mentoring program where we can mentor virtually um, some kids in Guyana. And we are also thinking of when kids immigrate to the United States, if, for instance, when they graduate from St. Rose's, if they come to the United States, they'll be able to contact our alumni association and be able to connect with a mentor, someone who has their interests, and not even though not may not necessarily have their interests, but who can try to advise them, tell them of things that because when I came to the United States,
Bev,
nobody told me what to do.
you have answered some questions that I have for you, some direct questions, and I like that. I like the flow of it because I want to talk about your visit to St. Rose's and what that meant to you. But before we go there, I just want to go to the chat room for a second. Karen G said, "Congrats, fellow alumni and three-legged race winner partner." Wow. You are a winner. Make no bones about it. I support your push for STEM. Don't stop now. This is only the warm up. Hugs and love. And June said, "I am so glad you're so honest. Yes, communication skills are important." Which takes me into this while you were visiting Guyana, the St. Rose's visit. What are some of the things you discussed? Well, you started to tell us about the mentoring stuff. Can you continue about this whole mentoring program? Why is that so important?
Sure. My good friend Hazelyn Boswick, who retired and she's in Guyana, of course, is a St. Rose's alumni. She invited me to talk to the third and fourth formers, and I agreed, of course. And I remember that Friday I had a television interview at NCN. It ended at 1 o'clock, and I told Hazen that I'd be there at St. Rose's at 1 o'clock. And as I walked into the auditorium, that was where we would go back in the day when we had reading of the marks or there was some kind of activity. As I walked in, there were about 300 to 400 students sitting, and as I entered, it was this roar applaud. Oh my gosh, it was, oh, I can't even describe the feeling. And as I walked in and I looked at those innocent faces sitting there, they were happy faces. They were, I mean, I can't tell you, Selwyn, of the time that I attended St. Rose's, any professional coming to talk to us. And so that's one of the things that my good friend Denise Durant, Oslin McDonald, Diane Carsby, we are currently trying to work on having a program set up so that anytime any one of us or anybody from alumni visits Guyana, they must go and talk to the group. We want to set up something like a career days. So they'll have our next alumni is Joanne Johnson. She is a nurse and an instructor, and she's planning to visit next month. And so she's going to go and talk to the kids. And one touching thing that happened after I finished my, talking to the kids, and I told them, I said, no, kids, it's not all work because you hear of these kids having 20 distinctions and all this. I said, you've got to have some, some fun too. We had garden parties, and I told them about the garden parties that we had to raise funds. And there was a boy. I think he was a third former. As I was leaving, he said, Miss, can I have 10 minutes of your time? And uh, I was of course rushing to get to another appointment. And he said, just 10 minutes of your time. Can I talk to you? That really meant a lot to me.
Wow. St. Rose's, and when you mention St. Rose's, I think of, all the schools, all the secondary schools, and at a time when education was stellar in Guyana, it was like uh, considered the best in the Caribbean. And you having attended one of the top high schools in Guyana, which is known for both its academic excellence and its high expectations of its alumni to pursue studies in law and medicine. Um, how difficult was it for you to choose a career in aeronautics, an area of studies new to women of Guyana and the Caribbean? How difficult was that?
When you, of course, when I started St. Roses, you start in the first few years, the first 3 years, you you take what is considered like a diverse group of subjects. Um, and as you get to third form, of course, I'm saying form because, of course, the United States is grade, grade one, grade two, whatever. But in Guyana's terminology, form three, that's when they kind of you start to veer toward where they see your strengths are. And in my case, my strengths were always the sciences. And so I did exceedingly well in physics, chemistry, biology. And then I had to select either I did history, literature, or economics. And I selected economics because I didn't want to do literature. And I, in hindsight, I look back, I think English and literature are very important because it helps with your writing. And so I, you hear people saying, I'm a technical person and I can't write. Well, guess what? These days, you must be able to write. And so I think that the education and the teachers that I had at St. Rose's, they really molded me into who I am today. And when I attended St. Rose's, it was an all girls school. It wasn't co-ed the way it is right now.
Um, why is pushing STEM so important to you?
The reason why, I guess, for a couple reasons. Um, the president, of course, had this initiative about STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. And to me, there's a need to increase participation from the underrepresented student population. And I'm talking about the Hispanics and the African Americans. There's Native Americans. There's Asian Americans here in the United States. Of course, the underrepresentation of specific student groups in the STEM fields is a national and an international issue. And the shortage of people in science and technology, in the workforce here and abroad, is will threaten your position as being a leader, innovator, and discovery. Because what we find is being astute with science makes you, science is involved in everything. And if you think about it, um, technology, for instance, we talk about a cell phone, we talk about computers. When you think of science, you think of medicine, you think of aeronautics, you think of, when you think of engineering, of course, you have all kinds of engineers. You have, the um, aerospace engineers, but you have other engineers like who build roads and things like that. And of course, when you think of math, you have people, accountants, budgeting, and all that. So it's just, when people hear STEM, they think it's just science, but it's not just science. And what we have to do is to kind of try to innovate and get the kids interested in pursuing those career fields.
What are some of the challenges you believe yourself and most people face in encouraging young women to pursue STEM?
I in it was April of this year. I participated with a a teen summit, and this was 50 African American girls from Washington D.C. area came to my office, and they came there. There was a summit that they were organizing, trying to get them exposed to STEM, and they visited our agency. And so I organized the visit, and of course I had the black box there, and I had some other aviation related things. And as I stood up in front and I greeted them, and I started telling them about myself, they said, "You're a pilot? Oh my gosh." When I introduced the engineer, my colleague, they didn't even know what an engineer did. And this is what I'm talking about. We will have to have career fairs that will showcase exciting science and innovation, with the goal of inspiring young people to pursue careers in STEM. Because if you don't tell them about what jobs there are, they will never know. They'll just think of, well, there's nursing, there are so many other career choices. A lot of the kids don't even know about them. And so my thing is, I have to go out and talk. And that's what I've been doing. And I have an appointment next month. I'm going to a middle school in Maryland to talk to the kids about, of course, my career aviation. But I also take some of my colleagues along to talk about their skills like engineering and math.
Beverly, in your experience, you have given many speeches, talked a lot about careers and career in aeronautics and avionics and so on. You're the first, I believe, and only black female at the NTSB. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm still wrong about that. And I'm asking you this because I want to go back to talk a little bit about alumni associations. There are many, and from what you have seen in Guyana when you visited and your experience, what do you think is missing? I mean, there's this model where our alumni associations work very hard to raise funds and to send money back to Guyana to help the schools in different ways. Do you think, in your opinion, that is working? And what do you think is missing? What more you think we can do?
I think, and my colleague and I, we were talking about just what you asked. I think what we need to do is, with us just raising funds and sending it back, I don't think that's going to help, because we don't want, it's like we're enablers and they just want to sit there and expect to get handouts. I think what we have to do is to encourage them to try to help themselves. And how are we going to do that? One of the things that my little group did was we created a questionnaire, and unfortunately, we were not able to do it electronically because we were hoping that we could just email it to Sid Roses, have the kids fill it out electronically, and then send it back. And then, of course, we will, you know, see how do the tabulations. However, we couldn't. So what we did is we sent the questionnaires down, and I brought back the results. So right now we're tabulating the results by going through, finding and trying to match, find out and see what the need is. We ask them, what are you interested in? What would you like to do? How can we help you? Like when I visited St. Roses, we need more computers. And so we're working on trying to beef up getting more computers. We also need like the Wi-Fi. Of course, they're going to have a restriction on the Wi-Fi because, you know, people can abuse those things. So that's something else. So I think, and the headmistress who I met, Mrs. Cummings, she reminded me of Sister Campaign when I went to school. She is very motivated. She really works hard with the children, have their best interests at heart. And so I met a few of the teachers. I met the science teacher, trying to see how we can maybe have some form of STEM as well as St. Roses. And I know Dr. Maya Trotz, who you interviewed on your program, she visited St. Roses and she had a program with St. Roses. So we are trying to connect with her again to see whether we can work out and have maybe another STEM presentation at St. Roses, because I think it's important that we have to give back. I feel we must give back. We didn't get to where we are just get here. There were people that helped us to get where we are. And so we need to give back. And I think by working with the kids, letting them also be responsible and not just sit and wait for handouts, we need to change the mindset.
In the chat room, Carol asked, how much has flying changed from when you flew for the first time?
Um, Flying has, especially, I remember when I got my commercial pilot's license and I returned to Guyana. You know, you learn using all the sophisticated equipment. You know, like in the United States, for instance, if you're flying from, say, Washington, D.C. to New York, you have weather stations, you could check the weather, you could do all these things. When we returned to Guyana, we didn't have the luxury of a lot of those things. It has gotten better. We've now got GPSs, and so because of the remote areas and not having a good weather reporting station, you can get to your destination and find that it's bad weather and you can't land. You may have to circle a bit. Sometimes you have to return back to either Ogle or to Mary. So it's getting better, but it's like learning to fly here with all the bells and the whistles and all the fancy things. And then when I got to Guyana, and it was flying was dead reckoning. It was like, you know, you flying in the jungle and massive jungle, and you know you're looking for the bend in this river and to find your way around. It was challenging, and then of course flying at night, it was challenging.
Patrick said, Good evening to you and your beautiful guests. That's a great point, Beverly, about being enablers.
Yeah, I think we have to change the mindset, and it's not going to happen overnight. But we have to wean them off. One of the things that my group and our group is a small group, and we're definitely going to try to build on it, is what we're trying to do is tell them that we want to help. We want to, for instance, find a family, find someone, a kid, and we've heard a lot of stories of kids who are going to school hungry. When you are hungry, you can't concentrate. So if we find that there's maybe a family or one of the kids at school that is experiencing financial difficulty, those are the kids that we want to reach out to. We were talking, even if we all contribute $10 and we could send and help that kid, those are the things that we want to do. But we just don't want to, have a party, raise all this money, send it back, and then because if we do it, then they're just gonna sit and there and expect us to keep doing it. But I think with the new administration, we have a new board, our Alumni Association, and Karen K. Gray is on the board. And I know Kay is gonna light some fires there. And with some of the other alumni that we're bringing on board, we need to have a vision. We need leadership. We need it's like successful companies. You gotta have a vision. You gotta be creative, and that's one of the things we're definitely gonna try to do. I think for 2014.
I agree with your comment on Karen. I know Karen very well. She is unreasonable.
She is.
Yeah.
And she was my three-legged partner in a three-legged race too.
um, are there any plans to pursue a career in politics, Beverly?
It's interesting that you asked that question because I got a message on Facebook from Bibi. Bibi is her name. And Bibi said to me, Beverly, you should consider running for president of Guyana. And I chuckled. And I told her, I said, are you volunteering to be my campaign manager? And she said, I will do whatever it takes to get you elected. And of course, we had a couple more thread conversations, and even some other friends intervened. I don't think politics is where I would want to go. Politics is a dirty game, and I look at the politics here. When folks try to run, I mean, they go and they dig up all this. We all got. I won't say we got dirty linen or things to air. I think if you want to find out who your ancestors are, just run for politics. They could definitely do a family tree for you.
You are indeed brilliant, Beverly, and many have echoed my sentiments that it is time for a woman to lead our country as president of Guyana. So maybe you should take Bibi and others up on that offer. But if you were given an opportunity, would you consider accepting such a challenge, though, in Guyana?
No, I think first of all, I think I
Beverly,
would
look at
get
us. We want to see your eyes. Look at us.
I would get a lot of pushback. I think because first of all, people would say, Beverly, you don't live here. How can you tell us what we should? How can you contribute to Guyana? You haven't lived here.
Beverly,
In, you know, in
Beverly. I'm kind of hearing Kay, and she hasn't said anything yet. I can hear her saying, "But since when do you care about pushback? Since when do you care about what people?" You went to St. Rose's. Look, you just so eloquently tell us about your plan and your vision for a new attitude and a new paradigm for the Alumni Association and the school. And here you are saying, well, I'm going to get a lot. Of course, you'll get pushback. You're Beverly Drake. But you've also been the first of many things. So, anyway, I hope Bibi is listening. My thing.
Yes, I will definitely send BB a message, a Facebook message, and tell her what Selwyn said tonight.
Rita said in the chat room, Rita said you should run. I don't know who Rita is. Um, what do you say to those women? Or, sorry, let me rephrase that. What do you say to those who say a woman cannot lead Guyana?
What do I say to those who what?
Who would say that a woman cannot lead Guyana?
Oh, I don't think they would say a woman can't lead Guyana because I mean we had Dr. Faith Harding, who was an ideal candidate. Faith is my very good friend and a hard worker, and I would support. I mean,
She
I
was.
couldn't vote in Guyana, but I would have voted for Faith. I think just like here in the United States, they want Hillary Clinton to run as a first woman president. I think, the thing about women is if you want to get something done, ask a woman. and it'll be done. And so there isn't anything that I would say a woman can't do. We can do almost everything. I mean, just there's some jobs that, demand strength and things, but if you want to get something done, just ask a woman. Consider it done.
I hear that. I hear that. Um, what are you proudest of in your life?
I'm I'm proudest of one of being a loving and dedicated mother to my two sons, Kevin and Kurt. And I love them unconditionally, and they have been my support. They have allowed me to showcase and to just, I can't begin to tell you the influence that my sons have had in my life. Being a single parent raising my two sons was challenging. When I started at the NTSB, having to leave them in the middle of the night to respond to accident sites, and trying to juggle motherhood, career, doing homework. One of the things that I must say, I respect women and I respect men too, because there are men who are stay-at-home dads doing the same thing. I respect people who can raise a family and work and provide and have a healthy, nourishing and loving home. And that's what I'm very, very proud of.
In the chat room, Karen G said, "Girl, I hope I'm pronouncing this right. You starting it up. Yeah, ask a woman." And Ali said, "I feel that Beverly can best fulfill that which is for her highest good. She has made phenomenal progress. Politics will stifle her genius." And then Rita asked, "What was your scariest moment as a pilot?"
My scariest moment as a pilot, I mean, Cheryl and I, we talked about it when we were in Guyana. We were sharing some of our experiences. Like I told you, we would take off and we would fly together and go to different, other airports. My first solo cross country, when I was training to be a pilot, I departed from Daytona Beach, and my first stop was Tallahassee. You have to land at 3 different airports. They call it a 3-point landing, and it's important. Your first solo cross country, that's the first time you're gonna take off, and you're gonna leave the area and fly 50 miles to another airport. Well, I landed at my first airport, Tallahassee. It was very early in the morning, and I didn't have any breakfast. And I parked the airplane, went in, got some coffee, came back out, and as I was taxiing back to take off, I the wings of the airplane were too close to there were two towers, and I was taxiing in between. It's like with two poles, and I was taxiing in between, and I was a little over to the right, and I hit the right wing tip, and I didn't realize it had damaged the wing, and there was a hole in the wing, and I felt the impact, but I just, at a time, I wasn't thinking. And so I kept taxiing. I called the tower and requested to take off. And just before I added the power to take off, something said to me, Beverly, check that wing that you just hit. And when I looked, I saw, like pieces of the wing, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what happened here? So I called the tower. I said, Tower, I'm going to abort my takeoff. I have a problem. And I taxied back to the ramp, and Selwyn, there was a big hole in that wing, the tip of the airplane. If I had only attempted to take off, I wouldn't be here to talk to you.
Wow.
Because I would have crashed. That was, oh my gosh, it was the scariest moment that I had. And of course, ever since then, I became more vigilant, not taxi near to any poles. Make sure that you do, before you actually take off, you just make sure you look around your surroundings and make sure everything looks okay before you take off.
June said, as time goes by, things change. Yes, it is time for a woman to lead. Perhaps the mess will be less. And Hazel W. said, keep on soaring. You have made us proud. Beverly, what would you like your legacy to be?
The way I would like to be remembered is that I reached out to the underrepresented groups, the underrepresented student population, and talk to them, share with them, tell them about my journey. And it's funny that you ask how I want to be, my legacy. In December, I've been invited to be a keynote speaker at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. And the reason they invited me is they graduating female students. I will give them words of advice on working in a male-dominated industry, coming from a third world country. I remember many years ago, this guy said, she came over in a banana boat. And guess what? The banana boat girl has exceeded beyond his expectations.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
With all that you do, Beverly, all this traveling, and you're in a very, very stressful, I can imagine, I've never worked at NTSB, but it must be very stressful and demanding. What do you do when you want to de-stress?
Oh my gosh, my girlfriends are listening, and they're gonna kill me when I tell them I like to shop at Ross.
Shop.
I'm a shopaholic.
Okay.
My girlfriends would say, "Oh, Beverly, you gotta stop shopping." But it's just, something I did once. I went to the store and I said I'm gonna test myself. I went to the store. I love shopping. I love clothes and shoes. And I went into Ross and I got a shopping cart and I walked around and I filled the cart with everything that I liked. And I looked at the cart and I picked up my purse and I walked out the store and left everything there.
Wow.
But guess what?
What?
I came back the next day and got it.
Oh, Beverly.
I did that test. It worked that day, but it doesn't always work.
What's in the future for Beverly?
Future for Beverly is I want to do some teaching, and there are a couple trips that I have coming up that I'm going to Embry-Riddle, and I know there's adjunct professorship at Embry-Riddle, so that might be something that I might pursue as a start. And then again, I will continue to work with the career days, and my goal is to possibly go back to Guyana and work not only with St. Roses, because I think we need to reach out to the rural areas as well, because there are kids there who are exceeding. If you look at some of the reports, there are some kids who are exceeding in some of the rural areas that we've never heard about. We need to go and visit those areas.
I
and
agree.
talk to those kids as well.
I agree. The question that I ask every one of my guests, Beverly, you were here before, and I don't know if you remember, but here it is. Excuse me. What makes you laugh out loud?
I'm sorry, I missed that.
What makes you laugh out loud?
Um, well, I just, what makes me laugh out loud, for instance, in August, I arranged a group of girlfriends. There were 15 of us. We got together and we all wore our fancy hats. We put on our swimsuits and we went to the beach. I have a little private beach here where I live. We went to the beach and we sat there and we talked old times. We talked about the good old days. We talked about the days when we had all those little boyfriends, and riding our bicycles. And those are things that I like to reminisce about. And so those are the good old days that will never leave us.
Bev, time is upon us, and I really enjoy this conversation. Can you take us out with a few words of wisdom or advice?
I would say to everyone to let us all work together and see if we can give something back. We've all been helped along the way. We've all had mentors, we've all had sponsors. We all needed that little nudge. I got nudged many times by my supervisor, Dennis Jones, and I'm glad he nudged me.
Baby, I'm not gonna wait no more. You know that I love you, so this is what I gotta say. I've been really trying, baby, trying to hold back this feeling for so long. And if you feel like I feel, come on, come on, come on, come on. Hey, let's get it on.
Said, suffer the little children to come unto me. Every day, more than 30,000 children around the world die of preventable diseases. More than 300,000 children are being used in war as child soldiers. Lord have mercy. A child should be loved. A child should be held. A child should be clean. A child shouldn't smell. A child shouldn't